episode of Lifelong Vitality. I'm your host, Kylene Terhune, your gut health specialist. I help women go from being constipated, exhausted, and frustrated to living free from the bathroom, full of energy, and confident in their bodies again through an individualized lifestyle, nutrition, supplementation, and functional lab testing approach. Really excited to have my guest, Stacy Claxton, on today. You may remember that she was with her sister Erin on episode 40, Women's Health and Being Fully Human. And if you haven't listened to that, I would encourage you to listen to it because it was one of my favorite episodes. And today, Stacy is back to talk about stress and anxiety, which is so applicable in this time that we're experiencing today with stay-at-home orders and self-quarantine and everything that's just going on throughout the world. I know that there's been quite a lot of emotions surrounding this time. So let me introduce Stacy. Stacy is a transformational coach and integrative health practitioner who helps stuck people find freedom and flow. She guides growth seekers, heart-centered healers, and embodied leaders through their biggest physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, professional, and financial blocks to discover their boundless inner power. But she adds the missing piece most mindset trainers and coaches neglect: body-centered tools to rewire the nervous system for lasting change. Her practice blends ancient and modern modalities, including Ayurvedic medicine, yoga, breathwork, meditation, somatic work, trauma healing, prenatal and postpartum care, emotional freedom technique, which we're going to talk about today, and functional diagnostic nutrition and more. So welcome, Stacy. I'm so glad to have you back.
Yeah, thank you, Kylene. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so we were talking last week about this being a really nice time to have you back to speak to people about managing stress and anxiety, because I know that with everything going on in the world, I mean, there's so much to be stressed about, frankly. Am I going to get sick? Is my husband going to lose his job? Can we go to the store and get the food that we need? How am I going to manage my children being at home from school for an indefinite period of time? Did I lose my job? Did I get laid off? Do I have to file for unemployment? I mean, there's just so many things going on right now. Is it temporary? There's basically the fear of the unknown, which I think a lot of time trumps other fears. Because, if you have a plan or you have an end date or you have things like that, you can create plans around that. But I think what a lot of people are dealing with right now is just this fear of the unknown. We don't know when it's going to end. We don't know how long this is going to go on. We don't know how bad it's going to get. We haven't really hit the peak yet. We haven't started coming down. And so there's just a lot going on in terms of dealing with this right now. So I thought bringing you on and talking about stress management techniques would just be perfect.
Absolutely, because you're right. There is a lot going on in our minds right now and also in our bodies, because stress isn't just a mental thing. And we're going to get into that today. And I know you know full well from your practice as a health practitioner that stress is very physiological. It affects the immune system. When we're in these states of anxiety and fear, it's going to downregulate the immune system. It's going to affect the hormone balance. It's going to affect how well our gut digests food. And that has an interplay throughout the body. So when we're in these places of anxiety and fear, we often set ourselves up to be reacting from a place of an emergency, from a physiological standpoint, that then leaves us more vulnerable to infection and illness and feeling run down and not able to cope with life stressors.
I love that little summary because basically, why is it important to handle this? Well, you just listed off the whole, digestion, immune system, hormones, everything that people want right now in terms of, hey, I really need my immune system to be 1,000,000%, right? I don't want to be worried that I'm going to get sick, and I want to be able to have restful sleep, which supports my immune system. But in order to do that, I have to have balanced hormones, which requires not a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you mentioned all those, because I told you before the video started, I want to share a little bit of my personal story and why it's so important. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those come into play with my personal story. So one of the things I kind of wanted to reiterate while we're talking about ways that we can manage stress, ways that we can approach it, things that we can do at home. I want to kind of backtrack from that and just let people know that, of course, there's always a time and place for medication. There's always a time and place for different approaches. And what I really want to reiterate is the difference between anxiety that is coming on because of a normal situation. There is stuff that is happening in our lives right now that's scary and unknown. And of course, there's going to be some worry and some stress, just normal worry about in your day-to-day with, the health of your children, for example. That's normal, right? So we want to be able to manage that. And that's some of the techniques that we're going to talk about today. But then there is stress and worry and anxiety. There's actually more physiological base. It's more chemical base. It has to do with your body actually behaving in a certain way. And it has nothing to do with your mental strength or willpower. And so an example of that is what I experienced in 2015 when I had what I call my physical crash, my breakdown, where I had basically a 2-week minimum ongoing panic attack, insomnia. I couldn't sleep. I was afraid of everything. I was crying all day. If I would wake up, I would cry again. I couldn't really get to sleep during the night, so I was exhausted during the day. And it really, truly got to the point where my husband had to take off work to babysit me. And if he couldn't stay home with me, my mom would. And I, was becoming this burden on my family. And I felt so horrible about it. And I didn't know what was going on in my life. I'm a very positive, happy person. It's just, I had intrusive thoughts. It just felt very outside of my body. It wasn't really who I was. This wasn't normal worry or normal anxiety. And so I kind of want to share that because there's different levels to this, right? And when I really started working, that really kind of put me on the path that I'm on today. It really was the trigger for me to end up doing what I'm doing today. So in that aspect, I'm very thankful for it as a teacher, but that really kind of opened my eyes to this difference between normal worry and anxiety and stuff that's actually physiologically happening in your body. And so for me, what I ended up discovering was this level of, I had inflammation in my gut. I had crazy imbalanced hormones at the time. There was a lot of things in my lifestyle and in my body that was happening that kind of made me feel this way. And so I think when it's really that dramatic and when it's that, outside of you, I guess is one of the best ways to say it, then I just want to encourage people to recognize that and work with someone, work with a practitioner, get some testing, get some support, because you don't have to feel like that. So if it's more of a chronic thing for you, or if it's more extreme like that was for me, it was really scary, definitely seek, deeper support. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about, kind of normal. If you have normal anxiety, if you have normal worry, how you can hack your body, how you can get into the rest and digest state, how you can stay calm, how you can, I don't want to say trick your brain into thinking about other things and kind of calming down again, right? That's kind of what our approach is going to be.
Yeah. And Kylene, I love that you offered your story in there and the encouragement that if the levels of anxiety or fear or panic like you experienced are above and beyond what might be normal due to the circumstances, then there's a deeper investigation that might be warranted. And that's where our work comes in, that we're able to investigate more fully. And you do that with such acumen and skill. It's great to see how your story has transformed other people. And I love the way that you're able to speak so eloquently to that, because the gut is so important. Hormone balance, all these other factors that you discovered about yourself, other people are experiencing too, without potentially even knowing it.
And that's the thing too, is a lot of people have no idea, right? Anxiety, I think we're so used to feeling like it's in our brain, or somehow it says something negative about us, that we should be able to be in control of it, but it's just simply not reality. That's just not what happens. Sometimes there are imbalances in your body that just force different mechanisms to turn on, and you can't control that unless you understand what's happening, and then you go in and support it. And so that takes a lot of work sometimes.
It does. And as you experienced, it takes a lot of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual as well as social support in order to uncover the roots and then provide the means to encourage those areas of your life to come back online. And I know some of the things we're going to explore today, even though they are focused more emotional and mental, they actually do help that physical response too.
Yeah.
And so they can help that physical healing, even if there's a very clear reason from a physiological standpoint why you're experiencing that high anxiety. And so that's what's kind of amazing about some of these tools and simple practices, is that they give us an opportunity to take our worst health crisis. For you, it was 2 weeks of a panic attack, whatever crisis or whatever situation, whatever even simple stressor that we're facing, into our own hands and take some action with it. And I do want to acknowledge something else that you said in there, just about kind of stress in general. It's not going away. It's in our environment, it's in our lives. Even if we didn't have this current situation going on in the world, there would be other stressors. And so the goal of this isn't to eliminate stress, because stress is actually a good thing. Even though there's a lot of vilifying stress out there, we actually need it. And there's a productive form of stress called eustress. And that's actually what powers our peak performance. It's what gives us energy in the face of adversity. It's what encourages us to find meaning when we're faced with all these stressors and challenges. And so stress itself isn't a bad thing. It forces us to grow. And so if we can use these stressors to grow and to learn new skills and to adapt and to face challenges with more resilience, and that's a really amazing thing. And some of these tools and consistent practices and things that we can chat about allow us not to get rid of stress in our life, but to know how to respond to them and to own what's going on in our nervous system, so that we can then navigate them and move through uncomfortable feelings and sensations and emotions and not stay stuck in them, but again, cultivate that resilience so that we grow through them. And that's really where the power lies.
Yeah, I love that. I love, you're so good at that side of things. So I'm excited to kind of show people exactly what that means. And one of the things that stood out to me is you said, sometimes it helps you find meaning. And I absolutely think that having, the sense of purpose in your life that comes from spiritual belief makes an impact on how you mentally can respond to different stressors in your life. And so for me personally, if I did not have my faith, if I did not believe what I believe in terms of having, purpose in everything that shows up in my life, if I didn't, have a relationship with Christ, if I didn't just have the, basically worldview perspective that I have because of that, then a lot of things that have happened to me would be harder. Not that they weren't hard enough. But for example, last year when I was going through the diagnosis of cancer and the treatment and stuff, gosh, if I didn't believe what I believed, I don't know how I would have emotionally handled that situation. And so I think that is just another layer onto this in terms of like knowing who you are and having a purpose in this world, and being able to look at stressors as, it's not always going to be easy. You're not always going to jump to this, but looking to stressors as an opportunity, a learning opportunity, as opposed to, making it a trigger for this spiral of anxiety type of thing. So can you share, what are some of these approaches? What is it that, you do with women, and how do you view this whole thing?
Hmm. Yeah. Part of it is very customized and getting in tune with someone's nervous system response. So, what is coming up for them? And often that's through the level of sensation and through emotion, feeling, whatever's present in the body right now, because the body holds a lot of really important clues. And sometimes it simply requires our presence. It requires us to take a few moments to pause, to use the breath, which is one of the most essential tools that our body gives us. And sometimes we take it for granted and forget about it. So, using the breath, using the body to tap into what's really present here and how can we move through it? How can we apply really hands-on tools? And EFT is one of them. We'll get into that shortly. But how can we use hands-on, body-based, breath-based tools to understand what responses our nervous system, our body are giving us? And then we can respond to them, we can listen to them, and often we get surprising results, and our body brings us to our own next best step. It brings us to a resolution or a conclusion, or it allows something to shift physiologically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, so that we know what to do next and we feel empowered. And so it really requires coming back inside and letting that inner guide dictate what happens next. Where do I need to take ownership of my health? Where can I grow? How can I move through this uncomfortable feeling, sensation, or emotion in a way that allows me to see it differently, so then I behave differently and I think differently and I grow. So it's a very much an intuitive process, but it's also fairly scientific in that we're using tools like breath, tapping, other processes that are confirmed to actually work and to rewire the nervous system and the brain for lasting change.
So you mentioned basically connecting to your body and your inner guide, and I love that because I really feel, and this is so interesting. When I was going through treatment, it's it's hard for me to explain this, but I'll try.
Mm.
When I was going through treatment, basically, these toxins that you put in your body in order to kill cancer
Mhm.
weaken your whole physical existence while you're going through it. And what was fascinating to me about that time was it's almost like the weaker your physical body gets, the stronger your spiritual body gets. And so it's just a very weird, it's like you're pulling away from the physical and it forces you to tap a little bit more into the spiritual. And so, you think about those types of situations and those types of feelings. First of all, it's like, you want your body to be healthy, but at the same time, you want to hold on to that level of awareness, I guess you'd say. And so it's a weird balance. But I think what is happening and what's shown so many times with people that do things like you do with intuition and breathing and connecting back to your body, I think we get very disconnected from our real self because we are so busy, or we're so up in our heads versus in our hearts. And there have been so many situations in life, I'm sure everyone listening can relate to this, where you make a decision based on what you maybe think is good in that situation, but there's something inside of you physically telling you maybe that that's not the right move. And for whatever reason, we'll let our conscious override that. And, over time, we just suppress that little voice, that little intuition, that, inner self or guide or Holy Spirit or whatever you want to call it. And I think the more you do it, the more disconnected you can get.
Yeah.
So I love that basically what you're saying is let's reconnect to that. Let's trust that. Let's honor that. And that was a big thing, I think, coming out of last year was, okay, let me really listen to my gut, let me really respond to these things, because typically that has a good outcome.
Yes. And I love the way that you latched on to the real essential of what I said right away, and that was connection. And often we're in a state of disconnection. We're disconnected from our own body. We're disconnected from other people. We're disconnected from our environment, from our purpose and meaning in life. There's so many ways that we often get disconnected, and we don't necessarily need to dive into exactly why. Often there's trauma in some way, and I help people work through that. Often there are small traumas or big traumas that force us into this safety mechanism where disconnection becomes a way of being. And when we're in that state of disconnection, we're not in our bodies. We don't feel safe. And when we don't feel safe and connected, we aren't able to tap into that creative center, that intuitive center, the part of us, the inner guide, the Holy Spirit, that still small voice that knows deeply what we need to heal. But when we can reestablish safety and connection, which is what all these practices do, that's when we're in this amazing place where healing can happen, because we've reestablished what's most essential for us as human beings, which is safety and connection. And I find it interesting also that we're talking about this right now, not just from the physiological standpoint and the mental, emotional, but from that perspective of connection, because right now we're being
Mm.
encouraged to disconnect, at least in a physical way. We're being encouraged to distance ourselves. And as human beings, we're wired for connection. We're wired for,
Yeah.
yes, we are created for connection, for relationship. And so that's another piece that can really compromise our well-being, our sense of immunity and our nervous system resilience if we don't have that essential connection. And some of these processes allow us to reconnect with our body, establish that, but we can also do it in community. And we can talk about some ideas that I have about doing this in community, because it reestablishes that essential connection and we heal in relationship. We grow in relationship. When that connection is restored inside and outside, that's when we become the innovative, creative, amazing, powerful people that we can be.
That's so fascinating because we need connection. We need that for so many things in our life to really be who we were designed to be. But I also feel almost like disconnection is a conscious choice we make in a sense that we feel like we're protecting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really something that's not helpful, you know? So we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot a little bit there with our actions. But okay, so let's talk about specifically EFT then, and
Yeah.
what is that? How can it help people in these situations? Just to kind of explain what the heck does that even mean?
Right.
Like, oh, it sounds like, I don't know, alien or something. What is it?
Right. Okay. Well, I want to dive into that, but I want to acknowledge one point that you said in there, that we tend to shoot ourselves in the foot because disconnection is a safety mechanism. And I did want to acknowledge that and it's a nice segue into EFT, because EFT often shows us ways that we've disconnected, but we have reasons for doing that. There's a reason that we're protecting ourselves. And sometimes we need to take that pause, use mind body somatic based healing tools to figure out why we set up that protective mechanism to begin with,
Mm.
and to find another way to offer ourselves that safety so that we don't necessarily need a coping mechanism that shoots us in the foot. And
Mm.
EFT is a great way to raise that awareness so we know why we're doing it. And only when we know why and we can meet the need in a healthier way can we really grow and change.
Mm.
So I just wanted to acknowledge that. It's not simply, oh, getting rid of disconnection or these safety mechanisms. It's acknowledging they're there for a reason and then finding healthier ways to meet that need. So yeah, just wanted to acknowledge that. And EFT, like you said, what is it and how does it help us do that? So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It's also called tapping. And ultimately, it's a radical tool of self-healing, self-empowerment, and self-love. I like to consider it this easy hands-on way, literally hands-on because you use your hands, a hands-on way to drop into more of a meditative state where you can tune into that spirit inside, that inner guide, the still small voice, as we've been talking about, and really drop in and listen to what it's saying. And we do that in a very physical, very simple way. And we take our fingertips, it's called tapping because we're going to be taking our fingertips and literally tapping on the body, and points in the body that specifically correspond to the endpoints of energy meridians. And in so doing, we stimulate those points. And while we do that, we then focus on unpleasant emotions or uncomfortable physical sensations or feelings or whatever's coming up for us. Or we can also pose questions to our subconscious, ask our intuition to give us some sort of response for a question that we're probing. And essentially what we're doing by engaging the body, by tapping on these specific points, and then by bringing up unpleasant or uncomfortable or lines of questioning, we calm down the nervous system. We tell the body, okay, it's safe now. It's safe to tune in. And that gives us safe access to emotions and uncomfortable feelings. It also restores the body's energy flow because we're applying pressure to these meridian endpoints. It activates the immune system because the nervous system is very much related to the immune system. And it also literally rewires the brain. So we're creating lasting change by simply tapping on these endpoints of energy meridians. And When we do all that, we come into this place where amazing changes can happen and healing is possible. And we don't necessarily need to go into all the science and research behind it, but there's quite a lot these days, especially that things like tapping and other body-based tools can affect physical pain. They can radically shift emotional issues, anxiety, depression, fear, grief. They've been used for all sorts of things, all sorts of health diagnoses, weight challenges, phobias, cravings, addictions, limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, different intergenerational paradigms, and even interrelational issues, stress in interpersonal lives, as well as financial, professional, and even you alluded to, Kylene, spiritual growth and this desire to become more aware of that spiritual layer. And you commented how when you strip back some of that physical and that you were weaker in your physical body, you could grow in that spiritual dimension and access places that you weren't aware of before. And so tapping allows us to drop into that really open space where we're in tune with our body, our mind, and our spirit. And we have access to a whole level of wisdom that we don't when we're going all the time in a flight or fight response and spinning in our heads.
That is so interesting. I mean, because it's really fairly simple.
It is.
It's a very simple tool, and you're going to show us how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be used for so many different levels, which is just crazy. I mean, I know people can even use it for things like if you get, car sick or something like that. You know, you're doing some tapping in the back of a car. You know? And it's so, I think it's so easy in terms of if you learn how to do it. If you're, maybe you work with someone like Stacy, and she gives you a specific technique for what you're going through, and then it's something you can pull out of your back pocket anytime you're triggered, so to speak. If something you kind of identify, hey, this is what's happening in my body right now, let me bring it back down, so that you're not constantly living in that state. Because if you can't bring it down, then it does have all those negative effects, like we talked about at the beginning, where it starts to trigger other things in your body, other imbalances, and then it becomes harder to pull back. But if you can kind of learn this and use it and identify the moments where it's going to be helpful for you, it's going to be something really easy for you to do. Now, is this something that you would say for someone to do almost like meditation daily, or use it more in those situations where, like I said, they're identifying a trigger and they need to kind of pull back? Like, what do you, is it both?
The answer is yes and more. Because ultimately, like you said, it's a really simple tool. And it's really versatile. Once you know the basic technique, you can use it in all sorts of situations. You can use it, like you said, in the back of a car if you're feeling car sick, but you can also use it if you're dealing with a cancer diagnosis, as you were, and a real major health crisis in your life. You can use it if something comes up, use it in the moment, or you can use it more like a meditative practice, and it's something that you do consistently and you put into your day. And so yes to all of those and more. Figure out, how does it most serve you right now? And this is where the customization and the self-empowerment comes in. And your comment there was beautiful, Kylene, because it speaks to the way this tool is so self-empowering. And so working with a practitioner at first is so beneficial, because you can really dive in and you can get into those blind spots and you can go deeper than you would on your own. But you can also use it for self-healing and self-empowerment, and you can take what you learn and run with it and use it, like you said, in those spot situations where you're feeling anxious or your physical body is giving you a message. And then you can also use it to cultivate greater resilience over time with a consistent daily practice. So yes, it's quite versatile. And as you acknowledged, it's quite simple. And sometimes that's a little bit hard at first. This tool is that simple? Like, does it actually really do those things? And we tend to sometimes.
It's like water, Stacy.
It's like drinking water is one of the most important things we can do for our physical health, and it feels too easy.
Yeah, exactly. And we all forget about it anyway.
What was that?
And we all forget about it anyway. We know it's good for us, and we don't do it.
Right. And so I want to encourage everyone who's listening up front that it may look funny, it may seem too simple, but if you give it a chance and start to practice it a little bit more in your life, you'll see just how quickly and powerfully it can shift the body and mind.
Awesome. Okay, so why don't you show us exactly what this is and maybe
Yeah.
some techniques for specifically the stress and anxiety that's kind of coming up for people.
Yeah. Yeah. So tapping is a great way to deal with stress and anxiety. That's one of its superpowers. And so we're going to learn the physical component, the actual sequence of tapping points here momentarily. I just want to speak to what else we bring into the tapping process, because I talked about bringing in uncomfortable emotions and feelings and questions. And that's often some of the most frequent questions that I get when people are new to this practice. Well, what words do I use? What do I say? How do I engage this practice? Because we can learn the sequence of points, but then what do I do with them? And this is where, again, there's no real right way to do it. Tapping is grounded in science, but it's also an art. And I do want to acknowledge the science piece for those who are listening and really want to understand, oh, is this grounded in science? Because it is. It's grounded in ancient traditions, but we're also realizing how really grounded it is in modern psychology, in physics, neuroscience, and there's
Can
a
we
lot of
just say
research. This,
really quickly, there's
Mhm.
a lot of stuff that's considered, a little woo, a little bit,
Uh-huh.
quote unquote, ancient wisdom, things that people have done for
Yeah.
thousands of years that just seem super basic. Things like, walking barefoot outside, getting
Mhm.
enough sunshine, using plants and stuff. Science, I guess I would put it this way, is now catching up. So
Yes.
there is a lot of validation to all of these things that we might consider a little bit odd because we're so ingrained in, modern culture, I guess you would say. But these are things that have been around for hundreds, thousands of years,
Yeah.
and things that cultures and people have used effectively. And now we're so science based. Now we're doing studies on them, and
Right.
it's showing exactly like how they're working in your body.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that was a perfect little interjection because that's so true. We have the time-tested, real-time honored traditions that provide us with evidence that these tools work, but we also now have some scientific proof. And even in relation to tapping, there's mounting evidence, especially focused on the amygdala in the brain, that tapping does work. And what's really striking is that it doesn't take much. Even current research shows that with a single hour of tapping, you can change 72 genes and reduce the stress hormone cortisol by 24%. So
What?
that's a significant measurable effect on real body systems and on actual DNA,
What
and it
that?
doesn't take a lot of time.
You say 24 per, you can drop your cortisol by 24%.
24%. Some research has shown that. So we are seeing that you can shift your physiology, you can upregulate immunity, change your immune system, regulate your hormones, and it doesn't require a lot of time, and it doesn't require a lot of extraneous external factors. We have this power in our own body and our own fingertips.
Yeah, and I would say if you're going to do it for an hour, absolutely work. If you're in a constant stress state, let's just go to
Hmm.
the cortisol piece for a second.
Yeah.
If you're in a constant stress state, first of all, cortisol that is elevated chronically is going to just cause so many other problems. And so that's definitely something you want to address. And so if you want to do something like this where you're going to spend an hour on it, I would say, why don't you work with a practitioner like Stacy so that, first of all, you're not stressed out during the hour because you're doing it by yourself and you're like, is it 15 minutes? Is it 20? Like meditating, right? Like how long am I doing this? It's very, very easy to hit an hour when you're working with a practitioner. And not only are you going to hit it, it's going to feel short and it's going to be so targeted to what you need versus if you're just kind of trying to figure it out yourself. And like you've said, it's not that you can't do it, but if you're really trying to make these dramatic steps, make sure you're doing it in a guided way because it's just going to help you, get further faster.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's incredible. 24% after an hour. That's
Yeah.
a lot.
That's a significant change. And I want to speak to two comments there that you made, Kylie, and one being, yes, you can do this with another person. And not only do you really allow yourself to drop in more deeply, but you add that second piece of healing happens in relationship, and it happens through connection and support, not only connection with our own body, but connection with other people and with a bigger purpose. And so that can be the benefit of doing that hour in conjunction with someone who can guide you into those deeper places. But the other piece that you offered, which is a great segue into what we were just talking about, is well, sometimes when you're tapping on your own, especially for a long period of time, you're like, well, am I saying the right words? Am I doing the right thing? And so let's talk about that. Because as we tap, we want to acknowledge everything that's uncomfortable in the body. And you'll see this explained in some places that start with the negative rounds. And I tend to put negative in quotation marks because I don't like to assign value judgments. If we're experiencing something, be it an emotion or a sensation, it's a valid human experience. And every emotion and sensation is legitimate. Some comfortable or unpleasant, but they all have their place. They're all communicating information to us, and they all have their place in the tapping process. That said, we can use this word, quote unquote, negative to start there, because we start with all of that stuff that feels uncomfortable and heavy, all of the triggers and the pain and the negative beliefs and those old memories and whatever's de-stressing us in some way. We start there, and as we tap, we give a voice to it. And we could use single words, we could use statements, we could simply feel it in our body and be silent with it. And I'll show you different ways to tap as we do some demonstrations here. But we honor all of that heavy stuff. And then we can shift into the quote unquote positive rounds where we start to feel different. And I tell the clients and groups that I work with, don't force yourself here. The goal is not to reach a certain outcome with tapping. It's not to force yourself to be self-compassionate or whatever the case may be. It's to allow your body to bring up what it needs to express it fully, and then shift organically into a place where it's ready to invite something new in. And maybe that's a new belief. Maybe it's a new action. Maybe it's a new behavior. Whatever the case may be, let the process unfold, trust it, and you might be surprised at what your subconscious, what these inner layers of yourself bring up for you. That's incredibly healing.
All right.
So that's the mental emotional piece. Let's dive in and explore what the physical practice looks like.
Okay.
And the sequence of tapping is really simple. And I do have a handout that makes it really easy. I can put this in the chat box for anyone who's here now. And we can also put it in the message, the comments later. Let me see.
I'm trying to think. I think
maybe it's easier for you to do, Kylene. I can just give the URL for anyone who wants to pull the handout. We're going to run through it personally, but if you go to soulsinsynergy.com / there it is, EFT-reference.
Yeah.
And you can get immediate access to just a quick cheat sheet on how to do the tapping sequence. But we're going to practice that right now, so don't worry if you don't have it. And I'm going to encourage you to pick one hand. Some people tap with both hands or alternate. If you're just learning EFT, I'd pick one hand, get used to the points, and then throw in both hands later if it feels good. And there will be several people who already have experience with EFT, and that's great. If you learn from someone else, maybe your sequence is slightly different, and that's okay. Like I said, it's a science, but it's also an art. And so if you want to tap with two hands or you have a few other points that you like, go for it. This is a really simple sequence that's great to start with. So we're going to start tapping at the top of the head, taking whatever hand you like, tapping with the finger pads, not the fingernails. And then remembering to breathe as you do this, coming back into your body, feeling yourself grounded in the chair, and then moving to the inside of the eyebrow. And this is really just to the right or left, to the bridge of the nose, in that eye bone. So it's fairly close to the eye.
Hey, Stacy, would you mind disconnecting and reconnecting, just because the sound is getting a little wonky and the most important part of our connection right
now? Okay. Let's do that.
Sorry for the pause. So I'll make sure people can hear you. There we go. If you guys are listening, you can download her reference guide and check it out while we're doing this, or you can print it out later after you've kind of gone through. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, let's try this again. All right, so
let's try this again. So we're starting the tapping process at the top of the head, Taking some deep breaths as you just feel the fingertips on the body. And moving to the inside of the eyebrow. And this point is just to the right or left of the bridge of the nose. And then we trace the eye bone around the eye to the side of the eye. Taking some deep breaths, noticing how you feel in your body. Bringing the fingertips under the eye. Again, it's pretty close to the eye as you trace that eye bone. Taking a deep breath and bringing those fingertips under the nose. Chin crease. Collarbone point. And here I tend to cross over the body. You can stay on the same side. It's up to you. There's a finger on that collarbone point and then a couple in that indentation beneath it. Should feel a nice vibration in the chest. Take a deep breath into that. And then under the arm. So the underarm point is about a hand width under the armpit. Tapping on the ribs. And then the side of the hand. It's on the pinky side, on that fleshy part of the hand. Taking a deep breath, noticing how you feel. And let's do that a few more times together. I'd invite you to close your eyes and just tune in your body as we run through this sequence, listening to the cues of my voice. Top of the head. Inside of the eyebrow. Side of the eye. Under the eye. Under the nose. Chin crease. Collarbone point. Under the arm. Side of the hand. And back up to the top of the head. Let's pause here. Take a nice full breath. Maybe keep your eyes closed or close them if they were open. And check in with your body. Notice how you feel. And anyone tapping along with us, just notice how you're feeling right now. What that process of moving your fingertips over your body felt like and what it brought up for you. And Kylene, what was that like?
I'm always surprised at how relaxing it is. I mean, it's just like, how is that even possible? I wasn't thinking anything. I wasn't saying anything. I wasn't doing deep yoga breaths. I was just tapping, breathing a little bit, that's it. And it's very relaxing.
It is. And that's a really common experience. People notice, I feel more relaxed. I feel more calm, at peace in my body. And that's because we are calming down the nervous system. We're putting ourselves into a space of safety and we feel more relaxed and present. And then we can start to bring things up from that place of safety. The other thing that often happens, and it's quite common too, is just the opposite, that people start actually to feel more anxious at first or more intense or less relaxed. And that's quite common because sometimes we don't allow ourselves to pause and check in and notice how we're really feeling. And when we do, we realize, wow, there's a lot here, and it starts to intensify. And so if that's your experience, that's perfectly common as well. And I would encourage you, simply continue to tap, continue to engage the process. Sometimes you feel relaxed, sometimes you feel more intense, and both are perfectly fine.
So it's really about kind of getting present in the moment, which makes so much sense when you're thinking about anxiety, because what is that really? It's worry and fear for something that may or may not happen in the future, right? And so we're able to really allow ourselves to be in the exact moment and realize that we're safe here. Nothing is happening right now. Nothing bad is happening. And we're in our homes, or we're in our chair or bed, or wherever you are. It's going to be a safe environment when you're doing this. And that really allows you to kind of mentally disconnect from the what ifs that's probably triggering those feelings.
Right. And that's beautiful the way you encapsulated that, because yes, it allows us to come back to that present moment where we can be safe right now rather than into the future and the potential might happen. Or sometimes fear is from the past too, and the programming of, oh, I've felt this way before. This emotion is familiar to me. It's a protective mechanism. I need to shut down and disconnect. And so it helps us access the memories and the what ifs in the future, come back to the present with them, and rewire the way we think about the future and the past so that we can be fully here now and step into that confidence and empowerment that's accessible.
Mm.
Yeah. And there are lots of ways to do that. I know we can jump into the full sequence here, but you asked earlier, so what are some ways to use this, especially with anxiety right now? And so I want to speak to the easiest way, and we can, like I said, get into a demonstration with some simple flow, a simple way to use it shortly, but that would be use that tapping sequence that we just practiced to bring some words and emotions and feelings into it, and to just tap and feel and be present with a specific emotion or sensation that's coming up. And the more specific you can get about it, the better. But sometimes, and especially if we're thrust into a situation that spikes our anxiety, we don't have necessarily the time, or we're not in the right space to do that full sequence and to come into a calm environment and to process fully. And so if that's true for you, even spot tapping can be extraordinarily helpful. So for example, you might find yourself with other people, someone who's triggering you in an environment where you can't do the full tapping sequence. So maybe you pick a discrete point, maybe like the collarbone point, and you just kind of massage the point here, or maybe you kind of just gently tap on the hand, the side of the hand here, and you notice, you breathe, you come back to your body, you presence that emotion, and often that simple gesture and a few moments of presence is enough for your body to shift. There are a few other points, especially for anxiety, so that's a great another simple way to use tapping. Just take a specific point and be with it and be with your body. But there's some other really great points that aren't always part of the basic sequence that are great for anxiety. And one would be this gamut point, and it's on the back of the hand here, in that space between the pinky and the ring finger. And again, you can tap on that point, or again, you can simply press or even kind of massage that area. And you can do so kind of discreetly if you're with other people. But if you're starting to feel stress, some people really notice that this helps curtail that cycle of negative thinking and future thinking and worry and anxiety, simply by spending time with this point. So this could be another simple way to use tapping to bring yourself a little bit more calm, a little bit more clarity, and a little bit more hopeful when you're feeling really anxious. And another point kind of on the hand, because again, the hand points tend to be a little bit more discreet, is this wrist point. That can be really good for anxiety. And sometimes, again, it's simply massaging it or tapping or pressing on it. Some people really like to tap both wrist points together. So that's another possibility. However you access this point, it can be great for releasing that anxiety and everything that's associated with it, kind of like insomnia or other things that can come up when people spend a lot of time in an anxious place. So those are a few ideas. You can run through the basic sequence. If you're in the time and space to do that, you can do spot tapping. And then one other idea I would throw out for people these days, which comes back to that idea of connection that we were talking about earlier, is make tapping a community practice. Make it communal. Do it in relationship with other people. And that's a third way to use it to really cope with these anxious times. Because if times of chaos and high anxiety or crisis teach us anything, it's really just how interconnected we are as human beings. And our health depends on that connection. It depends on healthy relationships. So if we can create these safe spaces where we can process our anxiety or anxious feelings together, we can process our emotions and what we're going through, then we can offer one another really a valuable life lesson. We can help one another be heard and acknowledged and validated, and we can realize that we're all going through the same thing. We're facing similar challenges. And so this is a third way that you can get creative with in your own space or your own home. So if you're family, if you're self-isolating with family, with kids, this is great for kids. And I know we've talked about the childbearing years before, Kylene, in another podcast, but children especially love tools and simple practices, and they can learn it from you and learn ways to cope with an increasingly stressful world. So we can proactively really encourage that resilience in our children from the safety of home in a way that can be fun. So if you're running anything to do with the kids at home, try taking together. Maybe you all sit together and go around, and each of you taps on something you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious or fearful about, and you just put it out into the open and have it validated. If you don't have kids or you don't have family around you, maybe you tap with a roommate, or you call someone and tap together on the phone. Find ways to include people that you care about and make it fun, because we also know that a great stress reliever is laughter, is fun, is lightheartedness. And so if we can bring a self-healing tool into our lives, our relationships, and then also bring some humor and creativity into it too, we kind of have this supercharged potential for healing and connection.
That's amazing. And speaking of the community, this is actually something that you've created that people have free access to right now, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good point. I am offering right now free access to my online tapping program, which is called Freedom and Flow, and it helps people really tap into that freedom and that flow that is their natural birthright. We have boundless power within, and tapping helps us access it. And we do it together as a community. We meet each week, and I'm giving people, especially during these times where we all need mental, emotional, and social support, free access for the next couple weeks. And so I can, you can post the link in the chat box or in the message below. I'll let you hear that name, but it's soulsandsynergy.com/freedom flow join. And it's an opportunity to come together as a global community and tap together, harnessing that boundless power at our own fingertips in relationship with other people. And we do have people from all parts of the globe. We have people from all seasons, all walks of life, and we are doing our work together. That really potentiates the work that we do on our own. So it's really fantastic when we can come together, offering that, again, freely for the next couple of weeks so that you get more access to this healing modality in a safe, supportive, like-minded space.
That's amazing. So you are cutting in and out just a little bit. So let me just reiterate that for everyone. She's offering this guided class. I believe you do it on Tuesdays, right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Central Time.
Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Central. It's called Freedom and Flow. I posted the link below this video. And you can go to Souls in Synergy. That's SYNERGY.com, soulsinsynergy.com/freedom-flow-join. And that is free for the next 2 weeks. And the day that we are recording this is Monday, April 6th. So make sure to check that out. And then make sure to download her EFT reference guide, which is soulsinsynergy.com/EFT-reference. And if you want to contact Stacy, you can email her at Stacy, that's STACY, at soulsinsynergy.com. So if you're interested in connecting with her and working with her, I would highly encourage you to do that. EFT is not the only technique she knows. She's really well-rounded in terms of this kind of energy and emotional support and healing. And it's just, this is really, really her specialty. And if you haven't noticed, she's very passionate about it, knowledgeable about it, and just has a real heart for working with women. So if it's something that you are interested in, especially during this time right now, I think it's just so appropriate, then click on one of those links, email her, message her, get in communication with her, use her free resource, see what she's like in a group setting, and then reach out to her after that and work with her one-on-one, because it's really just such a powerful tool. And thank you, Stacy, just thanks so much for demonstrating it and sharing it and giving us like different ways to use it. I thought that was really cool. You can go through a whole sequence and do that multiple times. You can just use some of the anxiety points. You can kind of create your own little anxiety combo, it looks like there, if you want to kind of rotate.
Yes.
Or you can go full-fledged, get some guidance, get some deep work with a practitioner like yourself. And I would highly encourage people to do that. So thanks so much for sharing. That was just really awesome.
Yeah, and thank you for putting this out there, Kylie. I'm wondering if you feel like it would be helpful right now to do just a simple sequence with a few words to give people another way to focus on their anxiety right here, right now, and get a little bit of relief. Yeah. Okay, so let's do it. And so wherever you are, and I'll kindly ask you right now, especially you're feeling more calm, but what have you been hearing from the women that you work with, especially how they're feeling right now? What words come to mind?
I think probably unknown. That
Mm-hmm.
is one of the things that people are feeling. A little bit more, I guess stress is too much of a general word, but
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of moms that are feeling just like that pressure because because everybody's home. And
Yes. Uh-huh.
also I had an introvert friend post. She's like, hey, everyone's making these memes to come to check in on the extrovert. She's like, but you got to understand that the introverts have no safe place right now, and everybody's in our space, so we don't really have a place to go to retreat. And so there's a lot of that going on, I think, as well.
Yeah, yeah. And what you pointed to is that this whole situation is very multifaceted, and some of what feels most stressful for us may be different from what feels most stressful for someone we're sharing our home with.
Right.
And so I'm going to invite you and anyone who's listening and tapping along with us to kind of close down your eyes and turn that gaze inward and check in with your body and notice what feels most true and most stressful, most anxiety inducing, most uncomfortable for you right now. And maybe it's, as Kylie said, maybe it's everyone's home and it feels stressful having so many relationships in your environment, or maybe you're all alone. It feels stressful being lonely, or maybe you're anxious about the unknown, the uncertainty, and you feel that most acutely, or maybe there's something else. Maybe there's anger or frustration or sadness or loss or grief or some other emotion that's strongest for you. And so whatever it is, tune into that and zoom in. The more specific you can get, the better. Zoom in on one specific emotion that feels most intense for you and give it a name, give it a voice. Be it simply a word. I feel so overwhelmed about this, or I feel really afraid about that. Whatever the case may be, give it a word, give it a name, and then tune into where you feel it in your body. Physical sensations that are coming up for you, and maybe it's a tightness somewhere, maybe there's a numb feeling or constriction or pain in your body. Zoom in and notice the physical sensations, and then as we tap, what we're going to do is simply give a voice to that uncomfortable emotion, feeling, or that physical sensation that's cluing us into how we feel. And I'm going to put a few options out there as you're tapping in your own space. I would encourage you to keep it simple and stay with the one that feels most true to you. And I would also encourage you to tap and speak aloud, because something happens, something transmutes our emotions and our sensations when we can actually express audibly what usually we only hear on the inside. And so whatever feels true to you, repeat aloud after me and voice it into your own space. And we'll do a few rounds just acknowledging all the stress and anxiety that we're feeling collectively right now. So notice your body in the chair, your feet on the ground. Take a deep breath, noticing the air in your lungs. We're starting at the top of the head, just naming how we're feeling. I'm feeling so stressed right now. And repeating aloud in your own space, whatever that looks like for you, whatever feeling is biggest. I am feeling overwhelmed. To the inside of the eyebrow. I'm feeling anxious, side of the eye. Acknowledge whatever feeling it is for you. Under the eye, I'm feeling afraid. Under the nose, this overwhelming feeling of fear. Acknowledge what it is for you. Taking a deep breath to increase all this stress and anxiety. Again, being specific in your own space, what it is that you're stressed or anxious about. Breathing into the chest and moving to the collarbone point, acknowledging the feeling, naming it, this fear. this anxiety, whatever it is, this uncomfortable sensation in my chest, this tightness in my stomach, whatever it is, acknowledge it. Acknowledge what you're feeling. Give it a voice. Put it into the space in front of you. Taking a deep breath, tapping under the arm. This feeling of overwhelm and panic. Acknowledge it if that's where you are. Give it a voice. Side of the hand, this incredibly overwhelming feeling of whatever it is, fear, stress, pain, sadness, anger, whatever's coming up for you, express it, feel it, acknowledge where it's coming up in your body. Taking a deep breath, moving to the top of the head. I completely accept that I'm feeling this way. And repeating that aloud in your own space. I completely accept that I'm feeling this feeling of, and name what it is. Taking a deep breath, feeling that emotion moving to the inside of the eyebrow. Even though I'm feeling all of this anxiety or stress or fear, whatever it is. Moving to the side of the eye. I deeply and completely honor myself right now. And say it aloud. Give yourself permission to honor how you're feeling. Taking a deep breath under the eye. I'm feeling so. Give it a voice. Let it be big. Express it. And under the nose, even though I'm feeling this way, I honor myself for showing up today. And chin crease, even though I'm feeling all of this, whatever it is. And taking a deep breath, feeling it, feeling the sensations in your body. And though I don't like feeling this way, acknowledge that. Perhaps you want to change it. Perhaps you want it to go away. Put that into the space in front of you, even though I don't like feeling this way. Under the arm, I deeply and completely honor this feeling. Taking a deep breath, moving to the side of the hand, even though I'm judging myself for it. Maybe you're judging yourself. Acknowledge yourself if that's the case. Maybe you're judging it. You should feel calmer. You shouldn't be anxious. If that's what your inner critic is saying, voice it aloud here. I'm judging myself. Acknowledge that. And even though I might be judging myself, top of the head, deep breath, I accept myself fully as I am. Repeating aloud, moving to the inside of the eyebrow. I'm giving myself permission to feel this way. Side of the eye, and I'm giving myself the love and attention I need right now. Under the eye, I'm open to receiving the support I need right now. Under the nose, as I work through this uncomfortable feeling. Chin crease, I may not like feeling this way. Collarbone point, but I'm open to being with it. Under the arm, I'm open to listening to it. Side of the hand, I am worthy of this time and attention. Top of the head, I'm honoring myself now by acknowledging this feeling. Inside of the eyebrow, and I fully love and accept myself exactly as I am now. And we can pause tapping here to take a nice deep breath and a cleansing exhale. And wherever you are, just tuning into your own space and noticing what that experience was like as we simply honored these feelings that are swirling all around us and inside your body as well. And perhaps something shifted, perhaps it intensified. Either way, That's a launching point to continue tapping into your own intuition, tapping on the feeling that feels most true to you, tap on the physical sensation that feels most uncomfortable, acknowledge it, express it, invite it to be there, give yourself permission to feel it fully, and then to listen to what lessons or insight it might have for you on the other side. How is that for you, Kylie?
I love it. I didn't want to talk out loud on the audio. I want people to be able to do it, but that was really cool. Thank you so much for walking us through the process so people can kind of understand going through those thoughts and kind of reframing.
Yes, and so that's just perfect. That's just a taste of how to use EFT. And that's what I do all the time with my clients, like you mentioned, also with groups. So feel free to join us for free tapping for the next couple of weeks in our group program, Freedom and Flow. Get more of that and access to ways to take ownership of this health challenge, these crises in our world, the stressors in your life, and really emerge more resilient, more centered, more calm, more grounded on the other side.
Thank you so much, Stacy. I hope you guys will sign up for her program. If you're watching the video, the links are going to be anywhere I post the video, the links will be below it. So make sure you check that out. Again, this is April 6th, so you'll want to join her tomorrow, April 7th, and then the week after that as well. So thanks so much, Stacy. Really appreciate it.
And thank you, Kylie. It's such a delight to be here with you.